Welcome, everyone, to another episode of the Camper Report. Today, we are talking about the 49ers' latest win versus the Commanders. That was a few hours ago when they won. We're also talking about Brock Purdy making history, becoming the 49ers broke the 49ers single season pass yards record. And he now joins the company of Steve Young, Joe Montana, and Jeff Garcia. What that means for his legacy. The 49ers, now that they have clinched the 1 seed due to the Eagles losing to the Cardinals, the 49ers, their playoff scenarios, who they would play, and a few other things. So let's get it right into it because this video, I really only want to make it 10 minutes. Also, stay to the end of the video because we have t-shirt designs that I am working on and close to finishing. So that means later on in 2024, we will have t-shirts for you guys. First off, I guess it's the new year for me because I am right now in Australia, but it's New Year's Eve tonight for you guys, which is closing. It's 7:23 p.m. on the East Coast. So it's closing in on New Year's Eve. So I hope you guys all have a great 2024. I'm sure looking forward to it. But let's get into it. Let's waste no more time. 49ers clinched the number 1 seed. So let's get into, I guess that's the only thing. We clinched the number 1 seed. Eagles lost in a close one to the Cardinals, 38-35. I believe that was the final score. The 49ers deserve this. The Eagles never did deserve it, and I don't mean that to be arrogant at all, but the Eagles have been on, they also, they've barely won last week versus the Giants. They lost to the Cardinals, who are a 3-win team, who, hey, I will give it credit. I want to quickly say, hats off to Jonathan Gannon, the Cardinals head coach. Hats off to, I gave him a lot of flack going into this year because I didn't really believe in him. I didn't believe in him as a head coach. I didn't believe in him as just a leader because of the Eagles defense down the stretch last year and what their performances were like. But he is a damn good head coach. He is a really, really good head coach. And I can't wait to see what the Cardinals do next. But I will say that the Cardinals are a scrappy team, but the Eagles should not have lost to the Cardinals. And I'm going to get into kind of breaking down that game in a later episode. But bottom line, Niners, due to the Eagles losing to the Cardinals, bottom line, they clinched the number 1 seed so they can rest their starters in week 18. They can rest their starters. They have a bye week, obviously, because the number 1 seed gets the bye week. They have a bye week, so they technically have 2 weeks off that a lot of their main starters can sit. And that's really good news because we have, as you guys know, as Niners fans know, we have a lot of injuries. Eric Armstead, Javon Hargrave, who has been dealing with some things, Trent Williams, Christian McCaffrey now. We'll get to him in a minute. Brock Purdy obviously has gotten a few stingers. So there are guys that need to get healthy. And now we have the chance to get them healthy. So it's going to be very exciting. So yeah, that's kind of what I've got to say on that matter. I will get into playoff scenarios, who the 49ers could be playing in a little bit right after this. The next thing we got to get to is Brock Purdy making history. I just mentioned it, but I'm going to mention it one more time. Brock Purdy breaks the Niners single season passing record. He finished off the season with 4,280 yards, 31 TDs, 11 interceptions. So, he had that bad performance kind of last week, obviously, as we all know, versus the Ravens, which kind of takes him out of the MVP conversation. But we all know Lamar Jackson's already got that. He beat the Dolphins today by a huge margin. And so, Brock Purdy nonetheless had an amazing season where, he joins for so long. The 49ers, in my lifetime, I really have not watched a single really elite 49ers quarterback. We've had Jimmy Garoppolo in my lifetime. We've had CJ Beathard. We've had Nick Mullins I've watched. We've had Brian Hoyer I've watched. We've had Colin Kaepernick, obviously, and then I watched the very end of Alex Smith. I don't know if he was super elite. So Brock Purdy is kind of a quarterback that I've actually never seen before. Did I lose? Okay, there we go. There we go. I don't know. I'm not sure what happened to my mic. The wire is a little bit weak, but continuing on, I want to kind of go through a little bit of the performance of the 49ers versus Commanders um, game, and so I'm gonna go through a few points there. But shout out to Brock Purdy. So actually, let's talk about Brock in this game. You know, Brock got settled in once we. At first, it was a little like he was shaking off the rust from that Ravens game, but eventually he got settled in. Once we wore down the kind of in the second half, he got settled in. I feel like the Niners, it's like the Commanders actually had a pretty good game plan against the 49ers, but they just didn't have enough talent to execute it. And so, we in the second half, we just ended up wearing them down. It was kind of a physical game in the first half. Second half, we just ended up, you know, it ended up just being not a game in the second half. Not it was closer in the second half, but it just ended up being a lot farther away. And Brock Purdy was doing a lot better in the second half because he was able to settle in. We were establishing the run game. We were starting to the Commanders defense was starting to get tired, which is what happens when you play physical teams like the Niners. But I will say that Brock played a really clean game, a really good game, but also just it was refreshing to see him do so well in a game following a game against the Ravens that would kill anyone's confidence. So definitely have to give Brock his flowers. Let's get to Christian McCaffrey though. We have to get to. I mean, he got in this game got over the 2,000 all-purpose yards. So that's impressive. Whenever a player does that, I mean, it's only done, by few players every few seasons. I don't know when's the last time somebody's gotten over 2,000 all-purpose yards. Maybe it was Justin Jefferson, but whenever a player gets over 2,000 all-purpose yards, that's really impressive. So congrats to Christian McCaffrey. Now let's get to his injury. Um, instead of I think with the Christian McCaffrey injury, we have to it was just like a calf strain, and so us clinching the 1 seed really does help. I mean, he can now rest for the next 3 weeks. He has 3 weeks to rest it, and I had a feeling that when he went out with that calf strain, the 49ers were just kind of trying to keep him out just to not further the injury. So I'm not too worried about that, but he does have a calf injury. Now, in place of him, Elijah Mitchell did even better than McCaffrey was doing, running really hard. And it just go, I mean, it really, he's such a Elijah Mitchell, it really makes me think of how much we missed him, because this was his first game back from injury. It really makes me just think of how much we miss Mitchell and how much it's gonna be so key to have him in the playoffs and have him kind of the second running back to Christian McCaffrey because it's gonna do huge things for this Niners run game. And I will say, kind of breaking down this game in a way of like game plan wise. Niners last week came out, passed the ball a lot, started out coming out and passing the ball. Instead, this game we came out and we ran the ball. I think the first 6-7 plays were all to McCaffrey. So that's also was really impressive to see kind of Kyle Shanahan get back to the identity of the team. And that's another big thing. But let's get to kind of the defense. I have a few kind of concerns and also just flowers to give out to, I guess. Lenore, his ball skills, I mean, on that, I believe I want to say he had on that interception. Um, we were up. So basically, the interception, I believe, on one of the interceptions that Lenore made, he like snagged it out of midair. I think it was almost a one-handed catch. So Lenore, his ball skill, I mean, man, he has some hands. So that was kind of something that I had written down was Lenore's ball skills. Shout out to him. He got an interception. But I also just think Nick Bosa, we have to talk about him. Did not get a sack today, but got a few pressures that were really key. It kind of, the pressures and the QB hits don't really show up on the immediate stat sheet, but it really does make he was super underrated today. It makes for a good conversation afterwards because I think Nick Bosa, yes, he didn't get any sacks, but there were a few key pressures that he got on Sam Howell, the Commanders quarterback today, that really affected the game. And one that stands out to me is on the first 49ers interception, I think went to Charvarius Ward. We were up 20-10. The Commanders were in the red zone. They were about to score. They were on their like 13-yard line. And then Nick Bosa gets pressure on Sam Howell, kind of hits his helmet a little bit with his hand, gets Sam Howell to kind of get the ball out quick, and it gets picked off. So, you're saying if Nick Bosa doesn't make that play to make that play on Sam Howell, then the Commanders maybe score, and now the Commanders are only behind 20-17. So that was a really, really key play. That was in the I think third quarter, I believe it was. So I mean, that was a key play, and Nick Bosa, definitely have to give him his flowers for that. I'm trying to think here. Commanders, so let's get to kind of some of the weaknesses here. And I will say they went after Ambry Thomas quite a bit, especially in the first part of this game. Um, it goes back to the thing of like Ambry Thomas, decent coverage guy, but when you put an elite receiver on him, he's not great. That's all I can say. He's not great. The Commanders had the right game plan, especially early in this game, first half. They went right after Ambry Thomas with Terry McLaurin, and it was succeeding. I mean, their first touchdown drive, they went to McLaurin 4 or 5 times through the air, and I believe he caught every single one of them. And basically every single one of McLaurin's catches in that first touchdown, Commanders touchdown drive, were against Ambry Thomas, let alone he also gave up that back shoulder fade in the end zone. So that's something that's still a concern. Like, yes, Ambry Thomas is definitely a level up from Isaiah Oliver, and he's a decent coverage corner, but it's like, unless he has his hands, like Ambry Thomas, I feel like at some points during the game, at all times, he's kind of holding receivers. And when he's not holding them, it's going to be a catch. So I would definitely, especially in the playoffs, watch out for Ambry Thomas. Another thing we have to talk about, you know, there were some rumors that were saying Jair Brown, especially after the Eagles game, does he get benched? Does Logan Ryan kind of come in and take his spot? I think that discussion is over. Logan Ryan was all right today, but Jair Brown brings that intensity and he brings that playmaker vibe that I didn't see from Logan Ryan today. Obviously, Logan Ryan was starting in place of Jair Brown, who was injured. And I didn't see the intensity. So Jair Brown needs to be back in that lineup for the playoffs because he brings a level of intensity that the defense needs. And I didn't see out of Logan Ryan. So definitely missing Jair Brown for sure. And if he's out for any more than a few weeks, if he's even out for the first round of the playoffs, I'm going to be a little bit scared. Second thing, how well can the 49ers manage the O-line and QB in high pressure situations? Basically what I'm saying, I mean, today the O-line was good, but that was against a terrible Washington Commanders defensive line. And so that's kind of a concern because it's like, how well can the O-line protect Brock Purdy in high pressure situations? They weren't able to do it last week against the Ravens. So that's kind of a concern that I have. And then another thing, it's like, when Brock Purdy has a millisecond of time, he's a great quarterback. He's an elite quarterback, and that's the difference between him and Jimmy Garoppolo is Jimmy Garoppolo, even when he did have time, he was like Brock Purdy, especially with the deep throws, when he has time, he will hit them. He's actually a very good deep thrower when he has time. The the difference between him and Jimmy Garoppolo is like Jimmy Garoppolo, when even if he did have time, he'd still not hit the deep throws. And so Brock Purdy's really good, but the problem is he doesn't have a great deep offensive line. So my point is, like, in high pressure situations facing a good defensive line, how is that offensive line going to hold up? I still think it's a major concern. So that's kind of something that you have to watch out for. So let's get to playoff scenarios. I think I've made the I've broken down the Washington Commanders game, and now let's quickly get to some playoff scenarios. Um, so let's assume that the Cowboys are now, well, have the Eagles won that? Because now with their loss to the Cardinals, I'm not exactly sure if the Eagles have clinched the NFC East yet. But let's say, assuming that either the Eagles or Cowboys are the 5 seed, and then the Rams are most likely going to be the 6th seed. The Seahawks, I believe, are going to be the 7th seed if they win out. So let's assume that it's the wild card teams are Eagles, Rams, Seahawks, and then obviously the 4 seed probably is going to be the Bucks. 3 seed is going to be the Lions. 2 seed is either going to be the Cowboys or the Eagles. So first round playoff scenarios, you're looking at, I would think, the bet out of the wild card teams, the team that has the best chance to win right now is obviously the 5 seed. But I wouldn't count out the Rams, as I've said earlier. So I'm going to say the Niners have the best chance, because if they're playing the lowest seed, Niners have the best chance, I'm going to say, playing the Rams, who have a very good chance to beat anyone that they play at the 3 seed. But I'd say if it's not the Rams, I'd say another team is either the Eagles or like, we can all say that the Eagles or Cowboys will probably beat the Buccaneers, although the Eagles, I don't know. If they get the 5 seed, will they beat the Buccaneers in Tampa? I don't know. So I think the most likely scenario is that the Niners play the 5 seed, the first round, which is either Eagles or Cowboys. And then the second most likely scenario is that they play the Rams the first round. And then the third most likely scenario is that they play like the Bucks the first round. Either way, we have home field advantage. But those are kind of the playoff scenarios. Let's move on real quick before I get out of here, because I know this has been a longer episode. Let's quickly move on to these T-shirts. I'm going to try to put this in full screen. So basically, you guys can probably see that these are my T-shirt ideas. Now, I have another T-shirt idea coming on the way, but this is the first one that I have. This is kind of an idea that I was coming up with, and so that's kind of my T-shirt idea. It's going to be coming out later in 2024 for you guys to buy once my site does go up. So, Higher Than Life, the Camper Report. That's, it's not, kind of symbolizes to me that, whatever adversities that I may face, I'm going to be higher than that. I'm going to be above it all, and I'm going to push through. So that's kind of the inspiration behind that T-shirt idea. I do have a more, that's less football based of an idea, like football based T-shirt, but I do have a more football based T-shirt that I will be sharing with you guys soon. So stay tuned for that. I hope you enjoyed this video. Niners win the first seed. They also beat the Commanders today, so very exciting for that. And then stay tuned for tomorrow. I'll be talking about some of the other games that happened this week, because it was an exciting week of football, from the Cowboys beating the Lions in a controversial way, to the Eagles losing the Cardinals, to the Ravens absolutely pummeling the Dolphins. So there were quite a few exciting games. I'll get to all of that in my next live, which will be tomorrow. Go Niners.